I'm doing a paper on the Marine Corps for my English class. It goes over talking about your discipline and problems in your discipline. Okay. I usually open multiple tabs just to find different bulks of information and visit various sites just to get a general idea of how I will present my paper. I usually look for timelines, things that I can go step by step in describing, and for any page that I find useful, I pin it just so I'll be able to come back to it occasionally just to look over it. I sometimes use Wikipedia just to get a general idea of the situation, not for citing or pulling sources from, just to get ideas from it. I usually start in the middle of a paper instead of starting in the beginning because it gives me just the bulk of information without beating around the bush, getting into what I want to read. simple brainstorm can make the entire paper easier. If you just map out what you want to do beforehand, it can save you hours and hours of time instead of just wasting all your time just trying to put your ideas together. You pre-plan how you put them together. I usually use official newspapers, .orgs, and .edus for my research. Sometimes .nets, depending on which ones. Not really .coms because a lot of them are easily changed and not scholarly enough for some situations.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. You too. I am writing a paper on finding solutions to environmental problems within Statesboro, Georgia. The first thing I usually do is to write a list of topics that we would go over for this group project. So the first one I could think of was pesticide um, solutions to or alternatives to pesticide use in crops. So I'd open up a Microsoft Word document and just write down some topics that I have. And then I'd open up a search browser. Okay. And then I'd start typing in pesticide alternatives. Okay, so the first thing I usually do is try to find respectable sources, maybe .org sites. And usually I'll try to bookmark sites that look like they have pretty reliable information so that I'd come back to it later. And usually at this point I'll just find just more sources through Google and start bookmarking them to review later. So usually my research process usually goes through by looking through my bookmarks and going through them in more detail later. So I'd start reading on this pesticide.org website and just look through and see what type of solutions they've come up with. And if I think the source is reliable, I'd probably start writing my bibliography. So usually I'd go to one of those bibliography generators because it's hard to remember every single rule there is to cite in all the sources. Hmm. Okay. And once I've got it cited, I'd start putting it into my Word document. So using search terms, I'd probably start using pesticide or alternatives, and then probably go deeper and try to find solutions for farmers and try to figure out what are some locally produced items in Statesboro. So that'd probably be like cotton. So I probably use pesticide alternatives for cotton farming. And the first thing I see here that looks pretty good is a .gov site, National Center for Biotechnology. And an article actually pops up about reducing pesticide risk to farming communities. So this would be a great article to use for this project. So I'd bookmark that to look at later. Okay. So usually I'd start changing up my search terms to just find more a more a diverse set of sources. Okay. So once I've gotten done with pesticide use, I'll probably come up with another topic like, let's reduce the pesticide use. Probably finding out what type of what type of food that the local cattle uses, and is there any way that it contains hormones, and if there is any way for farmers to use more, natural products. So I'd probably write down another topic for naturally grown livestock. And a lot of sites pop up about livestock standards in the US that are approved by the USDA. So this is a website that I definitely bookmark, and it talks about the feed requirements and the origin of livestock, and basically rules that farmers have to follow. So I'd probably try to narrow that down to Statesboro and try to find, switch up my search terms and try to find if there is naturally grown livestock in Statesboro and what farms they might be grown on. So the Statesboro Farmers Market pops up, and they basically have a list of all the different farmers that come to them and where they're located. So this would be a great place to actually start looking at each of these farms and start getting information about them and how they grow their livestock. So I'd probably just pick one of these farms and start investigating on them. Okay, so I picked the Hodges Farms, and I'm gonna start looking at what they have here. Okay, so I actually started looking at another farm called Painted Pig Farms, and they're actually naturally grown certified. So that would be one of the farms that I'd start investigating on and see why it is they chose to use natural ingredients, and how is it that they're able to, make a profit on using natural ingredients while others don't. Okay, so usually after I've got a pretty big list of different articles and different pages bookmarked, when I start going through them, I start picking out what I want and what I don't want. So after I've gone over reading through them and picking out what would best help support my claims, I'd start going through and paraphrasing and using them in my research project. Then after that, I'll start compiling my bibliography. And at the center of my research project, I'll definitely use this certified naturally grown website that basically tells you why farmers choose to be certified and how is it that they go about being certified. And this website actually helps you find farms in your zip code that are actually certified. So that'd be good to use. Okay, so usually after that, I'd start composing like the introduction to the research project, why I chose that to research, and then building on it from there. Because once I've got all those sources, it's easier to write my introduction and write the concluding statements after that. Yeah, that's basically what I usually do. Stop